Men who were sexually assaulted. What is your story? Serious. Asterisk asterisk attention. Serious tag notice. Asterisk jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. In asterisk asterisk any asterisk asterisk comment. Parent or child. Asterisk. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Asterisk report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. Asterisk I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to=r/askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. I was 8. Guy from down the street caught me getting off the bus, took my hand, and told me to come with him. I was a kid, so I went along. He was at least 16, maybe older. Long story short, things went down. He told me that if I told anyone he would kill my mom. My dad was an abusive asshole and I decided then that I'd rather live dealing with this guy than live with just my dad. The sex went on for about 5 months, 4 to 5 times a week. Over time I found I enjoyed spending time with the guy. He was the only who ever complimented me and showed me any affection. He disappeared one day and I later learned he was arrested for breaking into a store. He was later killed in prison for bragging about raping boys. The fucked up part is that I had actually come to care about him, and it was painful when I learned he died. It's made recovery all that much worse to deal with. I'm 52 now, and I still have issues that stem from that. This breaks my heart to know that happened to an innocent little boy that was already needed parents to care for him more. You deserve so much better than that. I hope you will find some type of healing peace in your lifetime. I wish I had healing energy that really worked, but I don't. But I'll send it through my thoughts. Anyway, please do something kind for yourself. Thank you. I'm building a fish tank from scratch. Thank you. I'm building a fish tank from scratch, and that's a good thing. I truly hope you get help. This story is awful and I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Thank you. I've spent most of my life in therapy and on various antidepressants as a result. It truly fucked up my view of the world, but it's not all bad. I've a decent enough life. My wife and I will have our 28th anniversary in a week or 2. So something went right finally. Good to hear you managed to build yourself a good life after all that trauma at such a young age. You must be a very strong and resilient man. Well done. This is a story literally nobody knows about except my sister, and it took me almost my entire life to share it with her. When I was a kid, around 8 to 10 years old, a guy used to live with us in the house. He was around 20 to 22 I guess back then, and he used to stay with us because he helped out with the housework and daily chores etc. Let us call him V. Since I was small, I would want to play after I was done with schoolwork, and because my dad would be at work and mom would be busy with her own stuff I used to play with V. Board games like Scrabble and basic kiddie games like that. One day he told me that I don't understand how much stuff adults have to go through and that adults also get very stressed, but they don't show it in front of me. In order to release this stress, adults have sex and I will explain to you what sex is. I had no idea what sex meant at that time, so I was naturally curious. V told me that it's a lot of knowledge, so he can't explain it all in one day and hence he will explain it to me over several days. For the next 3 weeks or so, he would call me to his room to tell me while he sexually abused me. He would explain what sex is and then proceed to show it to me. Over the course of those 3 weeks he would molest me and sexually abuse me. One day he was telling me to grab a small pouch that had fallen over the side of the bed and, as I bent over to get it, I could feel him against me. Thankfully my grandmother who was walking past the room saw this and immediately interfered. For some extremely strange reason, she took me to my mama's room, but never really spoke about the event, or if they ever did, it was not in front of me. After that day I never played with V again despite him continuing to live in our house for the next few months before eventually leaving. I did not even understand how to feel about what had transpired over those 3 weeks. As I grew up I understood what had happened and just did not know how to feel. I still do not know how to process it or understand it. Thanks for reading. I'm fine now, while I have other issues. I'm working on them and have never been sexually assaulted or molested again. As a fellow male that was sexually abused as a child and then again as a teenager. I'm so sorry. I'm now a mental health professional that works with young adults. Feel point free to message me if you ever need. She was my first girlfriend. I had never had sex before. My pastor is a father, so I believed sex outside of marriage was the worst thing in the world. Anyway, we went shopping, and I guess she got an urge. The most we had done at this point was make out. In the back of my car, she told me she wanted to make out, so we went to the back of my car. She then started grabbing me and telling that she wanted to take my virginity. I kept saying no, and that I didn't want to. But the male body has a way of saying yes, whether or not you want to. I mentally froze, and then physically froze, and I couldn't save myself. Anyway, she essentially raped me in a Walmart parking lot for my virginity. But it gets worse. It turns out she had set her iPod Touch, old but not that old, up in a position to record it. She revealed this to me the next day when I went to dump her, and then threatened to send the video to my friends and family if I ever left her. I knew I'd get thrown out if that happened. Ended up staying with her for 2 years being sexually, physically, and verbally abused. It scarred me for a long time, but now I'm happily engaged to the woman of my dreams and I rarely get panic attacks or flashbacks anymore. Moral of the story. Shitty things happen and can fuck you up. But it will get better. A lady grabbed me at work, in her home. I was a field service man, and had my pants off. I was frozen shocked what was happening. Once I unfroze I just said no, and put my pants/work belt on and immediately walked out. I called my job and they laughed. They also expected me to complete the job. I reluctantly did complete the job and I couldn't look her in the eyes. I just awkwardly left once the job was done. It is unbelievable how many stories I have heard from delivery men, plumbers, electricians etc. who have had women throw themselves at them inside their houses. I knew a UPS driver who regularly had women come to the door bare-ass naked. Crazy ass shit. As an electrician, I guess the porn is what really perpetuates these kinds of things. And the people throwing themselves at you are not the ones you want. Not to mention the possibility of things going horribly wrong. They decide they don't like whatever you're doing and report to your boss. You're now written up for making sexual advances toward customers. Or worse. B. They're married and their partner comes back. D. The list goes on. I was raped multiple times by a priest as a little kid. It was so traumatic that I blacked it out, and it wasn't until I was older, when I started becoming sexually active, that I kept having flashbacks. I was 16 when I started having those flashbacks and honestly a part of me wonders if it's all just in my head or if it really happened. I still struggle with so many things and it comes up in weird ways. I haven't told my family. My therapist at the time knew. I just didn't want to cause any more pain on them and have them view me as damaged or lesser. So I've kept it inside and tell only my closest friends or girlfriends. But I've dealt with the trauma and I'm much more okay now. By all means I could have and should have done something about it since it happened while I was a full-grown man, but I was sexually assaulted at work by a male coworker. It started off with him just trying to convince me, a straight man, to sleep with him. He would talk me up and make promises of it being the best thing ever. Eventually, it escalated in him physically grabbing my crotch at least once every shift. Often in places that other coworkers and even customers could see. This is especially bad because I was still a virgin at the time. No other person had touched my penis but this man. He would do this while still trying to convince me to have sex with him. There was one time when I needed change for $100. This was at a restaurant and he said he had change. So I gave him the bill and he said he would not give me change unless we went out to his car so he could give me a BJ. I kept saying no, and eventually I just walked away from him feeling helpless. Shortly after I turned away he did give me the money back, Then I went to the bar to get the change. I don't know why I never turned him into management to this day. I also don't know why nobody else said anything at the time either. Cousin used to rate me. Earliest I remember I was 8. He was in high school. We happened to be watching Boys in the Hood, and during the sex scene he pulled my pants down and told me to lie on my stomach. I didn't really know what was going on, just that it wasn't right. But he was the golden child. Everyone's favorite. So I didn't tell anyone, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. He molested me several times after that. Still can't watch Boys in the Hood to this day. I got on public transit with my wife one afternoon and was standing in the middle section because there was limited seating. Just having a chat with my wife and this older guy gets on at the middle's doors a few stops down the road. 50/60ish with a cane. Walked by me and without any shame grabbed my dick full on. He did not stumble or trip, just walked by and full on grabbed me. I was shocked. Looked at my wife. Looked at the guy who just kept walking like it did not happen and exclaimed, "Earth, that guy just grabbed my dick." Everyone on the car laughed. Everyone. No one seemed bothered by it. I was not sure if it was my wording or people not taking it seriously, but I thought I was crazy. Days after I was speechless. I kept thinking of excuses for why it happened and was frustrated and upset just seeing smiling, laughing faces after. I still honestly question if it counts as sexual assault or if I am overreacting. My 20-something-year-old cousin gave me a blowy at 12 or 13. I honestly thought it was the greatest thing in the world at the time, having just discovered porn and stuff, since I wanted to try it so bad, hence why she convinced me to do it. Also returned the favor. This happened a few times over a year. Fast forward 2 years and holy shit, I did sexual stuff with my cousin, and that definitely is hugely stigmatized. There was a good year there where I was absolutely petrified of anyone finding out and scared to death that she'd tell someone. It really messed with me for a while. Once I started dating and doing it naturally, I got over it. But goddamn, that year sucked. Like, I was googling all sort of "is there a way people can tell?" and obsessing over forum posts and stuff, trying to make sure guys didn't have some kind of mark or something. I know it sounds dumb looking back, but I was dumb and health class sucked where I grew up. Nowadays I know she'd never tell anyone, so I'm not worried at all. And I'm long past the point of considering it actual assault, though I know the world would classify it as such. She lives across the country, so our interactions are few and far between. A girl that I went on a date with once texted me the night after that date asking if I wanted to have wine at my place. I agreed and she came over, and not long into hanging out we started making out. She started nibbling at my lips and neck, and then that progressed into straight up biting hard. I wasn't into it at all, so I asked her to cool it with the biting, and all she said back was, "Maybe you should start doing it." More kissing, more biting from her, and even harder, to the point that my neck was covered in bruises and my bottom lip was swollen and bleeding. I stopped her and said, "I'm really not feeling this right now," which made her irate. She started grabbing for my belt trying to undo it, so I stood up to pull away from her. She wouldn't let go of my belt and managed to get it undone, and then started going for my button. At this point I'm up and circling the island in my kitchen, and she's following me clenched onto my jeans just above my crotch trying to pull my pants down. The button opens, and as she goes to reach her hand into my pants, I grab her wrists to prevent her from grabbing my dick. She persists, and at this point I really don't want her touching my dick, but that concern pales in comparison to my real fear, which was the fact that I was in a position where I had to defend against a sexual assault, but I have to make absolutely sure I don't leave bruises or marks of any kind on her wrists or any other part of her body. It was a pretty shitty feeling, wanting to defend myself, but feeling like I couldn't. After I've startled her, I guess, because she let go, and I told her to get the fuck out of my apartment. She grabbed her stuff while cursing me out and calling me a ref **** and stormed out. I spent the next 48 hours as an anxious wreck, expecting the cops to knock on my door with their cuffs out to arrest me for rape. Luckily that never happened, but the only reason it didn't was because she decided not to do that. Sucks knowing my entire future and livelihood was hanging in the balance of some mentally unstable and currently furious female who just tried to rape me. Mind.What compare it all to some of these stories. A vertical bar. I am so sorry guys, and I hope you all do get better. So my sophomore year in high school there was this really hot goth chick that would make some dirty comments about me. No biggie at the time, I was a horny teenager too, so I appreciated the attention, and again she was really hot, so I was okay with it at first. Slowly, it got worse. I would be sitting in class and she would sit behind me and moan in my ear. I got the feeling she was touching herself, but I never confirmed this because I did not want to draw attention to it. Also, like I said, I kinda liked it. Then it got to the point that she would get up to sharpen her pencil or something, and on the way back grope at my privates. I would be walking down the hall and she would grab at them, and my ass, this started to be awkward and uncomfortable because I did not know what she wanted from me. I tried asking her out and she rejected me, and I tried talking to her about toning it down or straight up not doing that anymore, and she kinda just gave me a blank stare. The day I felt really uncomfortable was when we were working in partners and she straight up clenched at my junk and squeezed really hard, and it did not feel like fun flirty sexual advances. It straight up felt predatory, like a power thing. Almost as if she was saying, I can touch you and use you any way I want, but if you try anything or tell anyone, I'll deny it and say it was the other way around. So I got pissed, and when sure enough she was there following me, so I grabbed her by the hand and pushed it away. I told her, next time you grab my dick like that, I am gonna squeeze your tit. I bet you won't it like that, huh? So stop fucking touching me. Oh, she looked shocked and confused, and I walked away. No, I don't advocate fighting sexual harassment with more sexual harassment. It was terrible, but I was so angry and upset that it was the only thing that came to mind. After that she left me alone. A vertical bar. I don't really know what to call it, but my older half sister, by 4 years, convinced me to play house. We would kiss, and she would touch herself and touch me. I'm not really sure how old I was, but not old enough to get hard, and I'm not sure how long it lasted. She said it's what siblings did, and at the same time, to not tell our parents or our little sister. I don't know why I didn't, and I still haven't. It led to me being attracted to other girls in my family. When I hit puberty, it wasn't until high school that I realized I should not feel that way. She has 3 kids now, and I barely see them because I don't want to see her. The only person I've told was my fiance. Thanks to anyone who's read this. It's nice to get it off my chest. For me, it was my brother. We had moved to a new house right at the beginning of the summer. I was left alone with him a lot due to my mom working. He started in on me pretty quickly that summer. It started with forced oral, then escalated to anal rape. He also did other types of shit too. He liked to play death games. He'd suffocate me until I passed out, wait until I woke up, and do it again. He'd do this over and over until he got bored. This went on for about 2 years. Anytime we were even remotely alone, he would rape me. I was terrified of him, and there were days where my mom would try and leave me with him, and they never saw that new behavior as a red flag. The worst of it came when he was almost found out. My mom and I were at the house of my mom's friend for an evening. I went to the bathroom to poop and came away with blood. I quietly told my mom, and apparently that was enough to get her suspicious. She began asking me questions about who poked me. I knew better than to tell the truth. Apparently that didn't matter. My mom asked my brother if he knew of who could be hurting me. Apparently this was a violation of his don't tell anyone rule. He punished me very brutally with the most severe of the occurrences. Luckily my sister interrupted us and took me on a drive to see if she could find out who hurt me. It stopped 2 years later. He said, "This is the last time." I promised and kept that promise. So, he died in 1996. A couple of years later, about 10 years after all this took place, a police officer came to talk to me. Remember when I said we moved at the beginning of the summer? Before that we had shared a house, a family whose mom was friends with my mom. It consisted of 3 boys, mom's friend, and stepdad. The reason the cops had come was that stepdad had been arrested on a ton of counts of child rape and molestation. His stepsons also came forward that he'd raped and molested them for years. The fact my brother started in on my right after we stopped living with them, a victim. It makes sense. He was only 11 when he started in on me. I was only 6. The sexual assault was by far not the only abuse. Besides the death games, he perpetrated all manner of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse on me in that 2 years. His dying was one of the best things that happened to me, as I no longer had to live in fear for me. It was my brother. We had moved to a new house right at the beginning of the summer. I was left alone with him a lot due to my mom working. He started in on me pretty quickly that summer. It started with forced oral, then escalated to anal rape. He also did other types of shit too. He liked to play death games. He'd suffocate me until I passed out, wait until I woke up, and do it again. He'd do this over and over until he got bored. This went on for about 2 years. Anytime we were even remotely alone, he would rape me. I was terrified of him, and there were days where my mom would try and leave me with him, and I'd freak out. They never saw that new behavior as a red flag. The worst of it came when he was almost found out. My mom and I were at the house of my mom's friend for an evening. I went to the bathroom to poop and came away with blood. I quietly told my mom, and apparently that was enough to get her suspicious. She began asking me questions about who poked me. Apparently that didn't matter. My mom asked my brother if he knew of who could be hurting me. Apparently this was a violation of his don't tell anyone rule. He punished me very brutally with the most severe of the occurrences. Luckily my sister interrupted us and took me on a drive to see if she could find out who hurt me. It stopped 2 years later. He said, "This is the last time. I promise," and kept that promise. So, he died in 1996. A couple of years later, about 10 years after all this took place, a police officer came to talk to me. Remember when I said we moved at the beginning of the summer? Before that we had shared a house, a family whose mom was friends with my mom. It consisted of 3 boys, mom's friend, and stepdad. The reason the cops had come was that stepdad had been arrested on a ton of counts of child rape and molestation. His stepsons also came forward that he'd raped and molested them for years. The fact my brother started in on my right after we stopped living with them, as well as started having other behavioral issues, leads everyone to believe that he was also a victim. It makes sense. He was only 11 when he started in on me. I was only 6. The sexual assault was by far not the only abuse. Besides the death games, he perpetrated all manner of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse on me in that 2 years. His dying was one of the best things that happened to me, as I no longer had to live in fear. When I was a teenager, I tore a ligament in my knee. I had surgery to fix it, and subsequently had physical therapy. I showed up in pants and a shirt. After some very light small talk, the physical therapist took me into an exam room. He asked me to change into some shorts which he provided. I did not really think much of it at the time, but when I put the shorts on, they were very short. I was wearing boxers under them, so you could without a doubt see my penis if you stood at the end of the table. The therapist walked around the table, touching my knee from a number of angles and leaning over so his body would rub against me. He finally settled down by my feet. He leaned over at that angle to add a Rexam my knee. He obviously had a view of at least part of my penis while he was rubbing his hard penis on my foot and pretending to examine my knee. I did not know what to do, so I just sort of froze. I never told anybody, and I made sure to bring my own shorts from there on out. This was 20 years ago now. Today I'm a father of 3, and my wife does not understand why I'm paranoid with regards to who our kids interact with. I was not sexually assaulted, but had an experience that made me really empathize with a female in a similar situation. It was traumatizing. I was roofied and robbed by 2 females. They approached me in the hotel bar incredibly flirtatiously. I was drunk too, so only saw possibilities, not risks. After maybe 30 minutes they suggest we go somewhere more private, so we go to my room and one of them pulls out a bottle of tequila. I am thinking how cool this should be a part of. I take a shot and then blank. Woke up at 2 p.m. the next day with around $10,000 worth of money and gear stolen. Cops were laughing at the whole thing, which sucked. Junior year of high school, during gym class, this guy kept running up and putting his finger in my butt. I kept warning him, hoping the coach would do something. I was also scared as this kid had a temper and would physically assault anyone who scored on him or stuffed him, etc. I finally knocked him out on impulse in the middle of class. The coach saw that and had to use smelling salts to wake the guy up. When he woke up, he started threatening me, etc. When I explained the situation in the VP office, I was asked if I wanted to press sexual assault charges. I did not know I was being sexually assaulted. I was ashamed. I was afraid I would get in trouble too, so I pleaded not to get the cops involved and asked if they could just move him to another class. I don't know what happened. I never saw the guy again. But the next morning the school quarterback approached me claiming he should kick my ass. I asked if he was friends with that guy. Quarterback said he wasn't, but he had waited for a long time after class to fight that guy until someone told him what happened. QB then told me everything was fine. He just thought it was funny that I knocked that guy out. My dad was an alcoholic, and after divorcing mom he had a string of bad girlfriends. When I was about 7 to 8 he started dating the local harlot. My mom told me that her name rhymed with her likes to Fuko. When dad and his lady decided to drink, myself and her 3 kids were left alone for hours at a time. She had 3 kids, all names starting with J. The eldest was a blonde girl around 14. The next were 2 boys around 10 and 7. I was about 9. One day we were in the top of the boathouse hanging out, and the eldest girl asked if I knew about sex. I said I knew about humping and stuff and boobs. She told all of us to take off our pants and then proceeded to stick a popsicle stick up each our asses, seeing how far it would go before we wussed out. Then she told me to lie down and tried to ride me. I did not know what was supposed to happen, but I did not get an erection, and she just frustratedly ground around on me a bit before getting angry with me and saying I did not know what I was doing. That was the end of that time. The popsicle stick thing happened again, and maybe a finger I don't remember. Dad and her stopped dating, and I never saw them again. It left me pretty fucked up and not really knowing how to approach or talk to other people about it, because I tried one time and someone called me fucked up and weird. This is not a traumatic experience, but it was definitely sexual assault. I was at a bar listening to a friend's band play. This woman, who was considerably older than me, approached and spoke in my ear because it was loud. She asked if I wanted to get out of there with her, or something along those lines. I respectfully shook my head no, and mouthed no thanks. So she grabbed my dick, squeezed hard, and said, "Listen, little Muslim boyo." I remember laughing because I am not Muslim. I am Italian and Filipino, but then telling her loudly that was incredibly racist and inappropriate. TBH, I actually laugh when I think back on it, because it was so weird that she called me a little Muslim boy, but regardless of that, she definitely sexually assaulted me. 12 years old, had a best friend who was a girl. Been best friends for a long while. Eventually people at school start talking about sex and we decide to try it. We don't know where we are going to get away with this until my mom's new boyfriend hears us and says we can use his place. Well, sure. Let's do the sex. We go over there one night. Typical movie scene where we each told a parent we were staying at another friend's house. We go to my mom's boyfriend's to have sex. We go in. We get undressed. We chicken out. Should have just been an awkward moment, but instead it became a nightmare. My mom's boyfriend bursts out of the closet and has a gun in hand. He tells us that if we don't have sex he will kill her and no one will ever know it was him, etc. Well, he pulls out a camera that had been on a stand in the closet and puts it at the end of the bed. He starts filming, then points the gun at her head. We cried through our first time. Didn't know what else to do.